records for us. Perfect. So I'm so happy to see everybody here. I know this is sort of a tricky time too, as well as West Coast, East Coast. And can you all see me? If you can, just put it in the comments, because I don't know if I can see myself here. Just let me know in the comments if you can. Ah, perfect. Awesome. Thank you for that. And you can hear me okay, which is awesome. Okay, so I have so much to share with you today. It's going to be jam-packed. But what I encourage you to do is, if you want to take notes, but this is being recorded. And obviously, if you want to reach out to me for the slides, anything like that, I'm happy to share that with you too as well. Because there's a lot of information, but I don't want it to be overwhelming. I think what's going to happen is that it's what's going to land will land for you. And, you know, the beauty of having something recorded is that you can go back, watch it again, and learn something new. So before I get started, a couple things. Obviously, we're being recorded, and there is a chat box enabled. I can see that you're already using it, so that's awesome. Definitely use this time to interact and ask questions. I probably will ask you along the way too. So definitely, interact with me. That'd be awesome. Of course, I'm not your doctor. I have to do this disclaimer and tell you that I'm not. I'm actually not your nutritionist, although I'm sure I know I have some clients that'll be watching this, but ultimately I can't diagnose you at the same time. So just keep that in mind. I will do my best to give you some, pointers along the way. And anything that I can support you with, I will. And if not, we can always have a chat offline and I can support you further there. So let's go through a list. We're talking about perimenopause, and I'm going to explain what this is in a little bit more detail, but really it is something that happens for most women, of course, between the ages of 35 until you get to menopause, which on average menopause is around 51, but it can go up to 55, depends on the woman. But there's a long list of symptoms, and let me know in the comments if you are comfortable, is just letting me know what some of the symptoms you have been dealing with. Because if you're here for a reason, and perhaps it could be one or many of the symptoms that are listed here. And I don't have all of them. That's the thing. I was thinking this morning, I'm like, oh, I've got this symptom and I've got this symptom myself. That's probably not here. It's just such a wide range. We're talking mood changes. I know that's an issue for me. Weight, of course, is the big one for a lot of women. And I know that's probably one of the big things we're going to be talking about today. Fatigue, like, regardless of how much you sleep, it's like difficult to recover. Hungrier, more cravings. Anxiety and depression is a big one too as well, which a lot of women heading into menopause sometimes don't make that connection. And I actually read a study the other day that 1 in 10 women quit their jobs because of symptoms related to menopause, though they don't realize that it's connected to menopause or perimenopause. They just don't feel well, whatever it may be. Could be anxiety, depression, just the fatigue, those sorts of things. So I think this is just such a great, thing to discuss, because it's hopefully going to make you feel a lot better with any symptoms that you might be feeling. I think if you can just check and make sure everybody is muted. I think I hear a few, and I will check.
Is it due today? Well, it's urgent. It's not due to.
That's better. Perfect. So I hear mood, fatigue, weight climbing, sleep, mood, fatigue, sleep disruption, memory, brain fog, big time. Yes, achy joints. So that resonates with me too as well. And I appreciate you sharing that. Hot flashes and night sweats, that's a big one. Heavier and shortened cycles, or really just erratic cycles. Might be a big one for you too as well. Wrinkles, hey, I'm sure that's something I think that we think is just a part of aging. Certainly it is, but getting into menopause and perimenopause can accelerate that. poor memory, brain fog, decreased libido, down the tank, droopy boobs. I had to put this one in because I mean, it's true, hormonally, if you're not supporting yourself adequately, these are some of the things you're going to start to see, and you're probably going to pay more attention to it. Achy joints, more injuries. This is something I have really experienced myself. We'll learn that as estrogen drops, you can be more prone to injury, more worry and self-doubt, and less confidence. Worrying, like I never really had a problem with, I could always kind of put worry in a drawer and go to sleep and wake up fine. But now I find myself really lamenting on a lot of things, and this is really a big symptom that a lot of women are dealing with too as well. So the thing about it is nearly 80% of women deal with these issues, symptoms in particular. And so I like to think that makes me feel a whole lot better, knowing that there are other women going through this. And I hope that it does for you too as well. But at the same time, we don't talk about it enough. And that's part of the reason why we are talking about it today. So if you feel like crap, a lot of times what happens is that we beat ourselves up and we blame it, especially when it comes to cravings and having this extra hunger. We often, if we don't know why we have these extra symptoms or cravings and extra hunger, we blame it on our lack of willpower. We skip more meals, we go low carb, we go low everything. We exercise more to punish ourselves. Or we latch on to another diet, of course, except along the way, unfortunately, dieting, as you'll know and learn from me, if you've been following me for a while, dieting just really isn't the best approach when you are in this stage in life, especially if you are trying to lose weight and you've noticed this extra abdominal fat. Typically, that's where it hits us. Instead of getting into this restrictive approach, as you'll know with me, I kind of do the opposite, is my approach. So the truth is that it's not you, it's actually your hormones. And I think that's hopefully resonating with you. And let me know, give me a thumbs up if that does, because weight gain in particular is just a symptom. Brain fog, for example, is just a symptom. Your fatigue is also just a symptom of something else going on. And 9 times out of 10, if not more, it's hormonally driven. So here's another truth. As a 35 plus woman, I don't know what your age is, you need actually more nourishment and less restriction. And we'll talk about why that is as we get into this. So I want to share a little bit about my story. If you've been in any of my masterclasses before, you will know that I may appear like I have it all together, but I don't always. And I certainly didn't in my 30s, actually. I had a pretty pivotal, journey where I felt really a big noticeable shift in my hormones in my late 30s. I have never been on birth control, which people find crazy, but I never have been on birth control, and I never really had issues with my cycle up until my late 30s. And I'm going to share something. So here is a couple of graphs which mean nothing to you, but I will explain them. So the one on your left actually shows cortisol. So some of you might be familiar with this if you've ever gotten your hormones tested, is that graph on the left with that really nice sharp peak, and then that decline, and then that flat line is cortisol, and really how cortisol is meant to be for women, healthy women. And then mine on the left, or sorry, I should say on the far right, that one is mine. So that flat line green is my cortisol level. So if you've ever had yours tested, let me know in the comments. And for a lot of women, this is actually quite common. So what should happen on the left side is cortisol really should peak mid-morning and then drop shortly in the afternoon. And cortisol is your stress response, right? It's actually what really picks you up in the morning, gets you going. gives you sort of that energy and that, that drive that you would have, right? But for me, I didn't have that. In fact, mine was completely flatlined. I actually spent 2 years just like trying to Google, solutions to my hormonal issues, right? So my hormones, or I should say my cycle became erratic. I was so fatigued. I really had a hard time getting up in the morning, and I kept going and I kept going. And I know for so many of you watching this, you're exactly, regardless of how you feel, you can feel the crappiest. You just, haul yourself out of bed in the morning and you just do it, right? But then you suffer for it with sleep, with your mood, maybe depression, maybe anxiety. I had crazy anxiety for years and I had no idea what was going on. And what I did was high intensity yoga 6 days a week. I ran if I overate, those sorts of things, which I know a lot of us do. When we don't feel good, we just instantly want to change it. We change it by restricting ourselves, by under eating, or perhaps over exercising, or whatever that may be for you. So finally got help with a naturopath and got my hormones tested. And little did I know is that I had a hormone issue. What I thought was like your sex hormones, like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. It wasn't. It actually was cortisol was my issue. And it impacted my stress hormones. So basically the pace that I was living, working full-time, managing a business, being like I was doing blogging at the time, going to yoga 6 days a week, all of these things, it just started to compound and I literally burned myself out. I know this resonates to a lot of you because I know some of you I have spoken to about this. It just hits you, and then it's like a domino effect, right? And it affects all these other things. So what ended up happening is I started to understand metabolism, which I'm of course going to share with you as we go on. So I, in fact, started to eat more, not less. I worked out a lot more strategically. While yoga is amazing, the style of yoga that I was doing probably wasn't the best at the time to support my body. I really started to harness my sleep. No more late nights and, being on my phone and checking my phone in the evening and working into the evening and things like that. So I had to really completely shift my identity, which was so bizarre because I was a health blogger at the time. And yet I felt like I was running this double life, right? I know so many of you run at a fast pace and, you're just trying to keep up and you've got these big goals and they're all really important, but it's sometimes often the expense to our health to us as well. Most of you know me, but, a little bit about me. I am a registered holistic nutritionist, weight loss and strength coach for active women. I became a nutritionist at the age of 40. And since then I have been working, for over 20 years, I worked in operations and human resources. But then recently, about a year and a bit ago, I quit my 9 to 5. I sold my job, or sold my home, I should say, rather. Actually sold my home first, then quit my job. And now me and my hubby are traveling the world. Currently in Palm Springs, but we are returning to Vancouver very soon. So if you're in Vancouver, I'm going to see you. So yeah, we're excited for that. We've had an amazing year. I would say that, people would tell me, even my naturopath said, you're going to leave, you're going to travel for a year and everything's just going to calm down, but life happens regardless of where you are, right? So we're still dealing with life and stressors and things like that. And the thing about it is that now I have the tools, right? Now I have the tools to implement when things go awry, that sort of thing. What I meant to share actually is that I went on bioidentical hormone therapy in my late 30s. And let me know in the comments. I'm just going to check the chat. Okay, so some people have gotten their hormones checked, which is awesome. So let me know if any of you have gotten into any hormone therapy or if you've had them checked, which it sounds like some of you have. I will say this, of course I can't recommend specifically what any woman would need in terms of bioidentical hormone therapy. But that was a huge turning point for me in my overall health. So my anxiety went away. Certainly my not that I was overweight, but I certainly was carrying weight in not the right places. Of course, in our midsection, as you will learn, is an area that we really have to pay attention to. And so, you know, a lot of people, I get worried about doing hormone replacement therapy because they assume that you just gain weight, but synthetic hormones can have that ability to do that while bioidentical. If you have the right practitioner and you're testing yourself regularly, it can certainly help you with that and help you with sleep, which it did for me. It's interesting is that I've been traveling for a year. We were only supposed to be gone for 3 months or 3 to 6 months. It's been over a year. And I ran out of I was taking progesterone, and it's really interesting within a matter of a couple months how things have changed. Not in a good way, I would say. I certainly am starting to see some symptoms really start to resurface, but I realized that, you know, there's again, some tools in the toolbox that I use, which we'll talk about, that are still supporting me. But I want to make a point that it's really important to test, not guess. That's one of my mottos. So you really need to have a really good understanding, especially if you're dealing with all these symptoms that you just can't seem to figure out, is that you get somebody to help you with that, and to see where your markers are and support you from there. Yes, so some have a while ago just checked cortisol, so not hormones. Okay, well, and the thing about cortisol, and it just depends on where your cortisol is. If it was tanked like mine, what happens is cortisol will steal from other hormones. So if you don't have enough of it, it takes from other places, which it did for me. That's why, excuse me, that's why I was having these erratic cycles, was because cortisol was tanked, and it can often steal other hormones. So that's exactly what happened to me. So definitely something, if we're going to go through, of course, my system or some of my pillars, and I'm going to give you some support. And you know what, if those don't start to help, then I would suggest that you go into testing and then go from there. So the goals for today is to understand what's happening in your body, why it's happening, and what you can do about it, which I think some of it we've already talked about. We're going to talk about my foundations, my signature 3M pillars that my clients use. Without restriction. So, you know, reframing their midlife is so important, refueling their metabolism, more energy, and losing inches, if that's your goal, of course, without restriction. As you'll learn, the restrictive approach as we head into this time of our lives is not the way to go. And then obviously, I want you to have a solid, rock solid confidence, because you've got big goals to achieve, right? So with these tools, we hope that we're going to help to, you know, build that all back up. Hormones matter because, let's get to it, for many reasons. And I won't go into these too much because I want to get to the, you know, the tangible things that you can work with, but it's important that we sort of talk about it. What I want you to think about, and I wonder if you know this and share this in the comments with me, is that if you have your biological mother around, and if you've ever discussed with her hormones and what her menopause experience was like, I want you to, if you know it, think about that, because a lot of it is actually hereditary, believe it or not. So my mother went through menopause at 45. I'm 45 as we speak. 45's a bit early, but it's not uncommon. And I remember exactly what my mother was like at that time. We joke about it now, but she was like, you know, she was having a hard time. She probably didn't realize that at the time what was going on. She certainly wasn't getting the support that she needed with her doctor. And it was a tough time for her. And actually, I think she retired early, and not, you know, because of her hormones, but, you know, she was having a challenging time. You know, her stress tolerance, I think, changed as she went through perimenopause into menopause, which many of you might be experiencing yourself. And so sometimes that can impact what your work situation or your career or your home life is like. So really, if you have your biological mother about, and if you are sort of, still in that transitionary period, it's really important to have a conversation with her and see what that was like, because sometimes that's going to show you a bit of a picture of what it's going to look like for you. Now, I'm going to find some ways to support you here. So you're going to have, some help along the way. But I think that's going to help you to prepare and what's going to happen in the future, potentially, right? So hormones matter. There are energy, weight, mood, libido, hair, skin, nails, weight, and cravings. It's literally everything. It dictates everything, how we feel on the inside and how we look on the outside. I think this perimenopause is a stage that happens in your mid to late 30s and into your mid 50s, right? Your ovaries are starting to retire. I always use this analogy, but it's literally that is exactly what is happening. So they're going, see ya, I've supported you for 35, 40, 45, 50 years. It's time for me to go. So a lot of those responsibilities get shifted over to our adrenal glands. Our adrenal glands is where cortisol comes from, our stress hormone. They're really, really tiny. And so now when those ovaries retire, our adrenal glands take on more. So they get overloaded, which is why as you enter your midlife, you actually have to take a bigger look at the state of your health, of course, but how you deal with stress, how you're taking care of yourself. You really have to look at it completely different. What a lot of women don't realize, and something I'm learning along the way too as well, is that there's actually changes in the brain that are happening as you enter perimenopause, which brain fog and forgetfulness and confusion, some of it does come from estrogen or decline in estrogen. But there's also this interaction between our brain and our ovaries that's happening, and that's starting to change. And so that's why a lot of times we start to see brain fog and forgetfulness and confusion. So when I talked about hormone replacement therapy, there's a lot of studies that say hormone replacement therapy, again, bioidentical, really can help slow the rate of that cognitive decline compared to those women who did not take hormones. So that's really something to pay attention to. It also can really help with your bones as well, and just really stretch out this time and your hormones longer. There's a lot of studies that show that it can actually help to support your body and protect your body from diseases in the long term. So I can share all those with you. I didn't want to go too in depth with that, but it's something to really pay attention to. Of course, a lot of these symptoms coincide with demand changes in your job, retirement, your children leaving, parents aging, age-related illnesses, right? We're at this stage of life where life gets harder. And so, that's the thing. It sort of compounds, and then we have this change happening in our body, and it's like, whoa, like it almost feels like everything's coming to a head. But when in fact, it's really just that stress, that ability to process our stress is changing too as well. You might also notice this too as well, is that there's a lot of connection between this stage in life, perimenopause and menopause, and trauma that's happened in the past. And you might find as you get into the stage of life too as well, that some of these situations that you've dealt with in your past, or maybe you haven't, start to resurface. So pay attention to that too as well. A lot of that is hormonally driven, and a lot of times we don't think that there's a connection, but there really is. The hormones, obviously, there's estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. These are the three main ones, but there's so many others that come into play, right? Estrogen, I always think of the sexy kitten. She is like the flirty one. It's, connected to our libido, our femininity. But the more estrogen we have, the good kind, you can have too much, and you can have bad estrogen circulating in the body. But When it's at normal good levels, it's actually an appetite suppressant. So that's why it makes sense that when we get into perimenopause and beyond, estrogen drops and we're hungrier and we've got all these cravings that are just like coming out of nowhere. That's where you start to see more emotional eating. And of course, body fat increases as well. Progesterone, my favorite hormone, because she is calm as a cucumber. She helps, with anxiety. She's what helps communication too as well. It's what produces our cycle. So when you start to see changes in your cycle, a lot of times it's because progesterone is going goodbye. The reason why I love progesterone is because it helps with sleep, but also helps to protect the brain as we get older. That's so important. Testosterone, can you believe testosterone is the most abundant hormone in the woman's body? You wouldn't think that, right? Because you always just assume testosterone is for men, which of course it is in men, but testosterone is, of course, part of our hierarchy too as well. So it helps to build that lean muscle, but it also helps with courage and grit and self-confidence. So if you're starting to see that dip all of a sudden, testosterone is really one of those key players. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can boost testosterone as you get into this stage of life. Cortisol, you know about, but what's important about cortisol is you got to know it's a fat storage hormone. And insulin, as we know, is what helps us to manage blood sugar, right? It's also a fat storage hormone. But these two, obviously, insulin in particular starts to jump up, right? And those two are the culprits of midsection fat storage. So something to pay attention to. A lot of what happens is that women can become very insulin resistant as we get older too as well, which means that if there's too much insulin being secreted in the body, the insulin can't get into the cells quick enough. So it's basically blocking insulin out of the cells, right? And so you're just going to find yourself hungry all the time because your insulin's not able to go where it needs to go. And then there's the thyroid, which is, I think, one of the most underlooked hormones. It's actually really thyroid. We have a thyroid, and the thyroid has multiple hormones within it. But it's the master of metabolism. So your energy and your weight. This is something to really pay attention to if you're starting to see thinning of your hair, you have really cold hands and feet, your massive energy dips, weight gain, things like that. So if you start to see with some of these, ways that I'm going to show you to support your body, if you 6 months from now, a year from now, it's not getting anywhere, really getting your thyroid tested is a really great place to start because that can be impacted. So, I do know my adrenals are at 0. So yes, I feel you for sure. And you are insulin resistant. Okay. So there is some great ways you can be supported in terms of your, nutritionally, of course. The thing about if you have really low cortisol and you have insulin resistance, then you definitely have to work on stress. And, it's not so much like the stress is never going to go away. It's just how are we managing it? How are we processing it through? 90% of weight loss resistance is hormonal. It's almost the same as insulin resistance too as well. So it's really important to pay attention, I think, to, a lot of the framework that I'm going to give you today. And again, if, 6 months from now, you're still dealing with those sorts of things, then again, you want to make sure that you're supported, through, of course, a naturopath really helps. And I know the person that posted that. So we share actually the same naturopath. So I know she knows all about that. So, and then obviously nutritionally, there's some great ways to support you. So the health of your metabolism actually will determine where you burn or store fat. So when we get into perimenopause, there is more fat storage. It's just the reality of how it is, right? So under eating, of course, because we start seeing this, weight gain in our midsection, a lot of us go to under eating, right? And some cases, we think we're probably eating enough. and I've been doing a science experiment myself in the past few months about how much I eat, and I was under eating, and I'm a very active person. I thought I was eating enough, but I was not eating enough because I also was starting to see some changes within my body too as well. So undereating can lead to metabolic adaptation, as you can see, which increases the length of time necessary to achieve weight loss goals. So this is a study that was done actually in premenopausal women, essentially perimenopausal women. So anyone in the, between 35 to menopause. My guess is a good majority of us are in there. The thing about it is that when you reduce your calories so much, your metabolism adapts to that, right? To that amount. And there's only so low you can go. It's like you can't be eating 1,000 calories to 1,200 calories. You're not going to be able to thrive. You're not going to be able to, maybe have the brain energy to do what you do at work or at home or wherever it may be. You literally cannot thrive if you have no fuel in the tank. And essentially, if you're only eating 1,200 calories a day and you're like, okay, I've got 5, 10, 20 pounds to lose, dropping more is not going to help the situation because your metabolism, well, one, you really shouldn't go, you basically couldn't, you couldn't do anything really if you're going under 1,000 calories, but essentially your metabolism is going to adapt to that. And it's essentially going to get stuck. You're going to get nowhere. You're just going to impact your thyroid, your metabolism, and so on. Stress impacts hormones, right? So stress can impact insulin. So when we're talking about insulin resistance, it definitely stress is a major, major factor in that. So that's a key player. So really, it's not like the stress is going to go away, but it's like, how are we managing it, right? And mindset is crucial at this stage because we are going to start to look at our bodies differently. I'm sure one day, if it hasn't happened to you, you'll wake up and you're like, what? You look in the mirror and you're like, something's happening, right? There's going to be that moment where potentially that will happen to you. And it's like, well, how are you going to navigate that, right? And realize, yes, hormonal changes are happening. And what are we going to be able to do about that, right? And how are we going to be able to embrace this time too as well? So I'm going to go through my 3M pillars. And what I want to say about this is that, and if you have questions specifically about this, pop them into the comment box and I will answer them, if not as we go at the end too as well. But what I want you to know is that there's going to be a lot of information in here because one of my mottos this year, or my visions this year, is to give a lot of value. And so it will be a lot of information. So you can take notes, but again, like just whatever resonates with you, take note of it. And when we get to the end, I'm going to show you how you can start to implement it without being so overwhelming. Okay. Sound good? Awesome. All right. So pillar 1 is, it starts with mindset. And the reason why I have my 3M framework starts with mindset, macros, and metabolism. They go to it hand in hand, and then movement, right? Muscle and movement. So there's basically 5, but I had to group them. 3M just sounds so much more, and so mindset is literally at the core of it. And the reason at the core of my work, I just don't talk about it enough, I guess, because there's going to be days where you're on a plan, you're on a diet, and the first week you're just like killing it. Like, it's like, I hit my whatever diet you're on. You're like, oh, okay, I got my 1,500 calories this today, and I got 25 grams of protein, and you're just like, wow, you're on fire. This feels good. But then week 2 comes around and it's party season, right? It's the Christmas holidays and you're at the buffet table and you eat something, right? That's not within your plan. Well, you're going to have days where you're just like, oh, I failed. Like, I ate that cheeseburger and fries when I should have had a salad. So I just failed. But that's not how it works. The thing about it is what's going to get you farther, and really what's going to start creating a lifestyle for you, is when you start to create this resilience around those days where it's not picture perfect, right? So the same thing happens with your views on midlife too as well, because the thing about it is if you don't have a vision for what that's going to be for you, you are the only person who's going to get in your way. So I always like to practice. I like to do a visualization practice, and I'd really love for you if you could tell me and share this with me in the comments, is that what do you see yourself feeling, looking like, being like? What does she look like when you're my age, 45, or if you're in your 50, what does she look like now? What does she look like at 52? Think about that. So for me, what I want to be is I want to be strong. Certainly I want to be lean. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If you have a nice lean midsection, that's a really good sign of metabolic health. And I know that. Not a lot of women know that, right? They want to look lean because it looks good. There's nothing wrong with that. But the byproduct of that too as well is that you're going to protect yourself from illness and diseases along the way. It's a fact. So I want to be strong. I want to be lean. I want to have the energy. I want to have a amazing libido, and have the most romantic relationship with my husband for the rest of my life. All of these things. That's how I want to see muscle. That's important to me. I want to, those sorts of things are really, really important for me. I'd love to know what it is for you if you want to share. Because it's just really, really important. Sexy, bold, audacious, confident, or some other words. Sexy is a good word. I love that word. We all want to feel that way. Energy, clear brain, strong, muscle definition. Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Muscle definition is nice. That is a sexy thing to see, I think, in a woman, right? We look at a man and we love muscle too as well, but muscle belongs on women too as well. So I agree with that. And we'll talk a little bit about muscle along the way too as well. And you know what? Your vision for yourself is going to change. So I just saw, clear brain and mental clarity. And I get that. Like, you want to be sharp, right? So it's really, really important too as well to have that, especially if you've got kids around and things and grandchildren along the way and that sort of thing, or in the boardroom, right? You want to be on top of it for sure. So we have someone who's 51, so at 52ish would be nice. Yeah. And I think we have to think the long game too as well. And I didn't put that in here. Well, I did actually. Weight loss isn't linear, right? The thing about it is, it's not like, 3 months from now, I'm going to be 20 pounds lighter. It's possible. It's possible for sure. At the same time, it's just, though, is that what's going to be sustainable in the long run too, right? And again, every woman is so different. It's easy to say one thing for one woman, but it's going to differ for everybody. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with me. Did you know stressed spelled backwards is dessert? When we are stressed, we do not want to eat a salad. We want to eat desserts. So thing about it is, it's because what happens is our cortisol picks up, and so does insulin along the way. And so we start to feel like we have all these cravings. We want all the sweets, that sort of thing. I get it, right? I want you to think about what your stress response looks like right now. And the one thing we have to keep in mind is our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight, as you've heard about. It's you probably know that, phrase, or fight or flight or term, I should say, is that, it is what helps us deal with stress, right? If somebody scares us, we're being chased by a bear, that sort of thing, that gets formulated between the ages of 0 and I thought it was 8. It could be 13, but I'm pretty sure it's 8. So 0 to 8 years old. So think about what your life was like when you were 0 to 8 years old. If I think about my mom, who both my parents worked, my mother was a career, like she worked in a hospital. She was a manager. She had 3 kids. all under the age of like 12, right? When I was, let's say, 8. So I think about that time, and she was working all the time. She was always on. She always got called at home for work stuff. And her stress response was not always, but generally most days of the week was a cocktail, just one after work, just to calm her body down. And that was something I started to adopt too as well, like even in my early years of my career too as well. And, for a lot of women, it can be eating, it can be emotional eating. For other women, it can be just binge watching TV. Other women, it can actually be over exercising, whatever it may be, right? Not always the healthiest approaches to managing stress, right? And this is the thing is that our sympathetic nervous system often is developed from that time. So think about that time. Think about what that was like for you, and who your model was. Mine was my mother. And listen, she wasn't doing anything wrong. It's probably what was taught to her. But that's what I emulated. That's how I burned out. I will venture a guess my mother was so burnt out, and she actually retired really early. I think she retired in her early 50s, or semi-retired. And she was legitimately burnt out. And so it's something really to pay attention to, is like, how was that formed? What did that look like? And what are you doing now? In The other thing that's really important is, if you, especially if you deal with like depression, or you have these moody symptoms and you might feel sad and you just don't know why, there's no particular reason, is that stress impacts our gut, and serotonin, which is our happy hormone, is produced in the gut. That's where it first starts. So if we're dealing with a lot of stress and it's impacting our gut, that happy hormone is just not being developed, right? So essentially, you as you enter your midlife, if you are struggling with some of these symptoms, you actually have to take a step back and really reevaluate where your life is and what pace you're working at and what needs to change. I always say you have to create a new identity. And that's what it is for me too as well. Do I eat perfectly? No. Right? I allow a really good, healthy balance, right? Monday was my husband's birthday. We went out for happy hour. We had cocktails. We had this. But then the next day comes around, we dial it in, right? So I'm able to flex that way, and I have a lot of comfort with it. I don't feel guilty at all. But that's also because I've evaluated how I want to live. I've created that new identity, and I'm aligned with it, right? And it's gonna, like I said, it's not linear. It's gonna flip. But it is something you really do have to pay attention to. So the next few are like the fun ones. We're going to get into macros and metabolism. And some of this you might be familiar with already, because I talk about this quite a lot. And let me know if that lands with you when it comes to mindset, because it's something that I don't think we talk a lot about. I think ultimately what happens is that women really, they want to know how much they should eat, what they should eat, how it's going to impact them, right? And you can follow a plan. I know you can follow a plan. I know you can eat 25 grams of protein a day, or not a day, a meal. It's the mindset stuff that you're going to have the hardest time with, because it's your brain. It's your brain tricking you. There's self-sabotage. There's all these things at play. And that's the part that we have to work the hardest at before we even get into the macros, right? So protein, you will know I'm a big proponent to protein, but there's a number of reasons why. Protein improves satiety, so satiation, right? It's what is going to help you keep that blood sugar level. It's what's going to help you feel satisfied after you eat. And there's, again, I have a study here that talks about how eating enough protein will actually help you to improve, or really your success with any weight loss program. So the key to this pillar really is stabilizing your blood sugar, because as you've learned, your blood sugar goes haywire often as we get, older, right? And so my friend with the insulin resistance, protein is a huge pillar to this, right? Getting enough of that protein. And I think I saw a comment that you had posted. So I'll get back to that one at the end of this too as well. But let me know if you have any questions as we go forward, and I'll answer them at the end. Generally speaking, you want 25 grams of protein per meal, right? And I always say it's really important maybe to start tracking a little bit, so you kind of know what you're consuming as it is right now. Because I swear to you, 10 times out of 10, all the women I work with, they undereat. It's just generally what happens. And I think we've just been conditioned to think that we have to eat less in order to be smaller, but that's not the case. So generally speaking, though, if you want to get what exactly you should be eating in terms of grams of protein, you want to look at it from a weight loss standpoint anyways, is your goal weight times 1. So it's basically a gram per pound of weight. So let's say your goal, of course, is 140 pounds, then you want 140 grams of protein per day, which is hard to achieve in a day. So how do you do that? What you want to do is you really want to break down your protein into 3 to 4 meals. I actually recommend 3 meals per day and then a snack. And that snack can be your high protein meal. But what I really want to see is women eating breakfast. Let me know in the comments if you eat breakfast or if you don't. I'd love to know. I know a lot of women who do fasting and things like that, which isn't always the ideal approach when it comes to weight loss, despite what one might think. But prioritizing breakfast is really, or protein at breakfast is, okay, good. We love breakfast. That's awesome. I know a lot of women don't feel hungry in the morning. I think I just posted a post the other day about if you don't wake up hungry, you don't have to eat a big meal. It can certainly be like if you drink coffee in the morning, it can be a blended coffee. I just recommended this to a client of mine. She does not like breakfast. She's a busy woman. She's a veterinarian, and she just would drink like bulletproof coffees, which it's hard to say whether or not it was going to benefit her or not. But what she's now done is she's adding a scoop of protein powder to it, so that at least what's going to happen is that you're turning your muscles from a catabolic state to an anabolic state. So it's going to actually help to preserve your muscle, but start to build your muscle at the same time. Yes. Okay, perfect. So yes to breakfast, and sometimes trying not hungry in the morning, but we'll have a latte with oat milk. So in this case, and I think this might have answered your other question, I don't feel hungry, so I don't eat much. So you don't have to eat a lot to start. So what happens if you don't have a lot of hunger is that your metabolism is likely adapted to you eating smaller and smaller and smaller, which also means it's going to suppress your appetite. So what I would recommend for someone like yourself is to start getting a good protein powder. I have 2 here, but I'm in the US, so I don't know if you can get them, but like a grass-fed whey protein powder, if you can tolerate it. If not, in Canada, the Genuine Health fermented protein greens, the vegan, I think they only do vegan items. I like that one because it's fermented and it's easy to digest. So if you're not like, you're a non-dairy person, I would start with that. So take that and blend that with your coffee first thing in the morning. So then you're going to start to get those hunger hormones going. Or you eat, I think the recommendation I gave the other day is like, if you do not eat anything in the morning, just 1 egg with some berries, and then start building from there. That's all it takes, right? And then you're going to find a week from now, you'll wake up in the morning, you'll be like, oh, I'm hungry. What is that? Right? So think about that, start that way. Let me know if that helps you. Fiber, really a very overlooked component to fueling our bodies efficiently. So what we want to look at is 25 grams a day of fiber. Again, you need to track that, but if you are eating plenty of vegetables per meal period, then you're probably good, right? If you eat grains, if you tolerate them, then that might be good too as well. The beauty of fiber in combination with protein is that it also helps to make you feel full. And it also contributes to longevity, really weight loss compliance with programs. So the other thing is it helps with elimination. And by eliminating, what we want to happen is that you are going, number two, 1 to 3 times a day. And the reason we want to do that too as well is that you want to metabolize some of those hormones in your body that need to go, right? Because what happens is that there tends to be sometimes, depending on the woman, you recirculate a lot of bad estrogen in the body, and that can bring an array of issues too as well. So the number one thing is you want to make sure that you are regularly, and well, that you're regular, right? And that you're allowing your body to detox naturally. Thing about it is you're going to have doctors, you'll Google this, or, you'll have a doctor that'll say, well, your liver is your body's filter, so it should be working for you. The thing about it is by the time you get to 40-ish and beyond, your liver, it doesn't work. It's not as efficient as it used to be. Let me know in the comments, if for those of you who drink, if you've noticed, like, you have a couple glasses of wine or whatever it may be, and the next day you can feel it, while I was like 2-3 years ago, you never did, right? It means that your liver really is not optimal. And so by increasing your fiber, or really not increasing, but just paying attention to fiber, making sure you're having regular bowel movements, that you're hydrating enough, you're going to help support your liver along the way. What else? Okay, yeah. Perfect. That seems to work. Good. All right. Protein and fiber are the most thermogenic foods. Do you know what I love about protein is that thermogenic food means that our body has to work harder to break it down. So what it means is that it spends more energy and burns more calories. So let's just say for every 100 grams of protein, you basically get a rebate back of like 20 grams. That's the beauty of it, because it's just such an efficient macronutrient that it works for you. So it's like awesome. So try and like focus on that. Let me know if you are prioritizing protein, and if you've really noticed that shift in your energy, of course, and your satiety, that sort of thing. It's been a huge turning point for me. It's really helped with sleep too as well. We talked about detoxification with food. So when we're talking about fibrous foods too as well, there's 3 types of vegetables I really love women to focus on. Dark leafy greens, one, because it's got, a lot of them have B12 in it, and it helps with that methylation. So it's basically helping to turn, those estrogens really out of the bad estrogens out of the body. Cruciferous vegetables, which are your broccoli and Brussels sprouts, cauliflower. They're loaded with phytonutrients. They're also really helpful with methylation too as well. And then there's allium vegetables, which are onions and garlics, leeks, things like that. And what those do, they actually help to boost glutathione in the body. So glutathione is like our master antioxidant. But you actually have to find ways to help produce it within the body. And allium is one of the best ways to do that too as well. Great thing to do too as well. So if we're dealing with gut health, and if you're noticing, serotonin is off, right? You're feeling a little bit lethargic and sad and moody and things like that, or low, as I like to say it. Maybe you're not depressed, but you just feel like off. I say that to my husband sometimes. I'm like, I just not 100%. And that's okay. One of the things you can do is really a variety of vegetables. Like every week, I try and get a new vegetable in the place for myself to rotate onto my plates, so that I'm helping to feed that microbiome. Any questions, please post them in the comments too as well. Fat, great source of fuel, helps to support our hormones. I just want you to pay attention though to the 2 types of fats. So omega, well, the 2 main ones that I like to focus on are that we see a lot of. One we see a lot of, one we don't see a lot of. So omega-3, I find a lot of women don't focus so much on omega-3s as omega-6s. So omega-6 comes from meat, nuts, and seed oils. We tend to get a lot of omega-6, and probably more than we need to, especially with seed oils, right? Like canola oil, sunflower, sapphire oils, which aren't the best oils, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. But oftentimes what we really need to start focusing on is the omega-3s. So flax, chia, hemp, smash fish, which are sardines, mackerel, anchovy, salmon, and herring, which you might not. I mean, I only like salmon, so that's the one I would go with. But I know a lot of people, sardines are a great food. I just don't know if I can eat them. But they're really, really high in omega-3s. And salmon, West Coast, East Coast people, you know that, salmon is an awesome fish if you eat it. Avocado is another one. So try and steer yourself from maybe, well, not steer away from omega-6, but try and prioritize the omega-3s. And here's the thing about carbohydrates. If you follow me, I'm pro carbohydrates. So here's the thing. In my opinion, you have to earn your starchy carbs. And I used to think differently about that. Like I'm like, intuitive eating and that sort of thing. And I still believe that. But a lot of women don't understand intuitive eating because they're not connected with their body and they don't pay attention to their body. And they oftentimes don't even love their body. So they are not paying attention to it. So, and the intuitive approach doesn't always work until you start learning to love your body, learning to work with your body, doing things like this, like a masterclass like this. This is a great way to start. So I feel like your starchy carbs, like your potatoes and the pastas and the pizzas and things like that, is trying to get an adequate movement, especially if you start to pick up the weights and the strength training and things like that. That's the best time to start incorporating them, right? When you start getting your metabolism really working for you, you will be able to enjoy those things a lot more, right? So I tend to focus most women on non-starchy. So those cruciferous, all those vegetables we just talked about. And start to pay attention to your carbs, right? You will find that as you get older, your carb tolerance is going to change. So you might find you should feel energized when you eat them. And if you don't, if you feel lethargic and slow and drawn out, then you really have to adjust them and focus really those starchy non-starchy carbohydrates is the way to start. Okay, perfect. Let's talk about muscle and movement. So muscle is the organ of longevity. I don't know if you know this, it's actually an endocrine organ. So it's considered an organ in the body, although we don't often know that. But what I love about it is that the more muscle you have, the more it boosts your basal metabolic rate. So basically your basal metabolic rate is what you burn at rest, the calories that you burn at rest. Your BMR takes up 70% of that. So that's incredible, right? So how do you work with your BMR, or how do you boost your BMR? And essentially your metabolism is through building muscle. So getting adequate protein, and we'll talk a little bit about exercise too as well. So if you're under eating, the thing about it is you're probably going to lose fat along the way, of course. If you start that way, let's say tomorrow you decide to cut back 500 calories, along the way, you're probably going to lose some weight. The thing about it is you're going to lose muscle along the way too. So you have to realize that that's in combination going to impact your metabolism. Eventually it's going to stop. Your results, you're going to be like, it's stalled, it's flatlined. So the thing about it is that under eating and restricting your calories too much really is going to impact your basal metabolic rate along the way. So resistance training, I know some of you are advocates for it. It can actually help to decrease fat mass, including abdominal fat. A lot of women think that, crunches and, these, crunches and things like that, I always think of like 80s workouts and things like that we're trying to get the six pack. Believe it or not, resistance training is probably the best way to work on that midsection weight. It's probably one of the most effective tools that you will find in your toolbox. And so I've linked, of course, a great study that demonstrates that resistance training is effective with, helping with your metabolism. and frailty, right? For me, I want to be strong. I want to have balance. I do not want to be falling and hurting myself. That's really, really important. Love the weight training. So that's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. If you aren't, the thing about it is, I know a lot of women get really, um, they're scared of it, right? They think that they have to go into a gym and lift these big dumbbells. You don't have to. And you will find that when you start just even with the stationary machines and things like that, you'll start to build that confidence, and you'll start to see yourself engaging in other things. It is really important to work with somebody too as well if you really have some great goals that you really want to achieve. The beauty about muscle, when you are working on building muscle in combination with protein, those are the two best things that is going to change your body composition. And I know if somebody, I think a few of you have mentioned, you want to get more toned, you want to get leaner. Only thing you could do is build muscle to get there, along with a combination of the right macronutrients too as well. So I recommend just starting out 2 to 3 weeks, and you don't have to be there for an hour. You could be there for 30 minutes, or if you have a workout at home, even better. The goal is tension. And the goal should be to be strong, right? So you're literally just want to work against tension. So it should feel heavy, but you don't want to kill yourself along the way either, right? That's the goal. So I'm glad that you are advocates of that too as well. Every woman's goal should be building strength. And in my opinion, an hourglass figure, I'm a big proponent to that. The reason why is for longevity, for strength, balance, mobility. It looks good. It's true. It looks good. But an hourglass figure, the reason why, and if you follow me, sometimes I talk about this, the reason why is strong glutes and legs. They're your two largest muscle groups. And what it does, especially for us ladies, getting into our later stages, is that it actually mops up glucose for us. So what you will find is the more muscle you build, the more things you can really enjoy without feeling like crap afterwards or feel like you gained 10 pounds overnight. Muscle acts as a mop for glucose. The other part about it is that you have a leaner midsection. So that's a really good sign of metabolic health. Metabolic health, I think it is 95%, no, 85%, close to 90% of North Americans are not metabolically healthy. So a majority of Americans are at risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and other illnesses. Canada would fall under that, I'm sure. So it's really important to pay attention to. One thing that I like to do is, and I'll share this with you, is, do your hip to waist ratio measurements. You can search online. And that'll give you an indication of where your metabolic health is. But your waist should be smaller than your hips. That's the general rule. But there are some metrics for women versus men. You should be able to look that up. But if you don't find it, let me know. And that will certainly open your eyes. We are almost finishing up, just so you know. I know some of you are working right now. So I just want to let you know that. So we're almost there. So we talked about resistance training, creating tension, doing 2 to 3. I think we had a duplicate. That's why. Okay. And then cardio is important. It's just moderate intensity versus high intensity is what we want to look at, more moderate intensity versus high intensity. So strength training versus high intensity, like HIIT workouts you're familiar with, or walking versus long distance runs. So the thing about long distance running, if you're an advocate for running, is that unless you are eating adequately to fuel your body, the thing about it is that it trains the body to adapt to it, right? So this might mean that you think that you're burning like 500 calories in a run, when in fact it's going to drop to 100 calories. Like your metabolism becomes that, I say it's efficient, it's smart, but it will drop based on your endurance, right? So you really have to, if you are doing long distance running, you really have to fuel yourself adequately in order for that, metabolism really to balance out. So the one thing that I do recommend though is zone 2 cardio, which is about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. So you might find yourself a little bit winded. It's a little bit hard to talk. But it really generates energy. It stimulates the mitochondria, which of course decreases as we get older, but this is like the powerhouses of our cells. This is like anti-aging right there, right? It helps to stimulate human growth hormone, which is awesome. And it improves your ability to utilize fat as fuel. So it's amazing if you can do that. So what I see that as is if you're at a gym, you're on a treadmill, you're doing, a 5, 6, 7 incline, even more if you want, and you're like going up a hill. That's zone 2 cardio. So I like to kind of get that in a couple times a week. And then I just walk every day. The important thing is just make sure that if you're lifting heavy weights, so rowing is moderate for cardio. I would love, yes, 100%. Rowing is great. And I should have added that in there actually. So thanks for bringing that up. Rowing is awesome. And just, if you're walking 6,000 to 7,000 steps, if you track it, there's really no golden rule. Like people say 10,000 steps. Okay. If you're working full time or you're busy at home and you've got lots, you're probably getting your steps at home for sure. But the thing about it is it's not always realistic, right? So I think 6 to 7 is a really great place to start, right? So don't neglect those carbs. Post-workout rest is really, really important, and rest days are very important. But if your adrenals can handle it, which gauging from some of you, they can't, I would only recommend high intensity interval training and circuits and things like that are really great to boost testosterone and human growth hormone. But if your adrenals can't handle it, it will make you feel worse, right? So maybe 10 to 20 minutes of circuit training or HIIT training within a workout you could do. But yeah, it's really hard if you're already taxed to add more to it. So again, and I don't think I mentioned this, is building muscle is the best way to boost testosterone. So like I said, the most abundant in women, but you lose it. And the thing about muscle too as well is that we lose between 3 to 8% of muscle per decade. So it's really important. If you don't take care of it now, you will lose it. And we need it. So here's the implementation. It's super easy. Just pick 2. It's the pick 2 method. I don't know if I created this, I don't know, but just pick 2. So I would love to know in the comments, what are 2 things that you can implement starting today, tomorrow, that you can implement for the next 2 weeks, that's going to help impact your hormones or your just how you're feeling, help to support your body, help to manage stress differently. Give me 2 things that you can implement for the next 2 weeks. And maybe I'll check up on you too as well, and see how that is going. And the reason why I say this is that that's a lot of information. Are these things that I do? Yes, but it's also only because I started little by little. Literally, that's all I did. And when I work with clients now, it's exactly the way we do it too as well, because you have a lot going on. You can't look at all, I think I had 30 slides here. And say, I'm going to achieve that all in one day. Okay. Adding leafy greens, protein at meals, and daily walks, 8K steps. Love it. Eating breakfast and walking every day. So that breakfast, add in that protein powder. That I think is going to make you feel great. I just want to make sure that, you also keep adding in as you keep going, right? Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. If there's any other ones, add them in. Okay. Studies show that weight gain, regain occurs after 1 year of substantial weight loss. That's why weight loss diets don't work. Diet to me feels like you have a start date and an end date. Am I right? But it shouldn't be that way, right? What you want to be doing is implementing those 2 things, adding that in for the next 2 weeks, you are probably going to feel better. Look at what your protein needs are, right? What's your goal? 140 pounds is the goal. So work with at least 100 grams of protein and break those up into each meal too as well. Dieting is hard. It's not sustainable and it will impact your metabolism. Ultimately, what I talk about, and I don't talk about this a lot on the internet a lot because it's it's kind of hard for women to get past, or not past, understand, is that it's what I do is a reverse dieting approach, right? So literally what we did, so the person who mentioned eating breakfast, who didn't eat breakfast before, just by you adding in protein in the morning is going to help you start to gradually increase calories, right? It's going to start to pick up your basal metabolic rate. You're going to probably start in about a week or so from now. You're going to start to feel like you're hungrier in the morning, and you're probably going to start to feel like you have more energy too as well. So when you have more energy that you take in, you're going to have more energy to go out. That's the thing. That's the beauty of it. And you're going to be able to just rock it. That's the thing. You're going to feel satiated and amazing and all those things. So bear that in mind. I'm going to check up on you on that one because I think it's so profound, right? So that's awesome. So what I'm going to do is, I know most of you on here for sure. So what I invite you to do, and if we've talked before, it's okay. I want you to do this, is to book a clarity call with me. Like I said, I'm my motto for the year, my vision for the year is just to add value to those around me. So, if you've talked to me before, you know that my clarity calls really are about understanding where you're at, where you want to go, and help you to uncover how you can get there, right? What's worked before, what hasn't, that sort of thing. I always get people that I'm on the call with to leave with something. And you'll have an opportunity to learn about ways to work with me, but whether or not we do or not, I want you to leave with something, so that you can, feel empowered and make whatever changes that you can along the way. One of the things I do talk about is it's my new program, although it's an old program, but it's like refreshed. I'm changing it up. It's the rebalance method. You might have heard about it. It's my 12-week fat loss program. So this is my only one-to-one program that I offer. I'm changing my programming this year, and I want to work specifically one-to-one with women who really want to redefine weight loss in their midlife and really want to get stronger, feel better, really change their identity, but in a good way, right? So if that speaks to you, I invite everybody for that call. I will email a link out tonight. And I think, unless I have the link here, let's see if we can pick this up. Oh, I can. I will link it here then. Looks like I can. So you can certainly grab that and book something with me next week, whatever you feel like. Some of you know me, so you can always just DM me if you don't see something that works within your schedule. But are there any questions before we say goodbye? I know I answered some along the way, but I want to make sure that you got all your answers or all your questions answered as I hydrate. And you're more than okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. That was informative. Be in touch. Awesome. I appreciate that. And yeah, I will follow up. There will be a follow-up email. I know so many people reached out, said they couldn't make it. But there will be a recording. So for those of you that weren't here, you will also get the link to the clarity call too. And if you have any questions related to this masterclass, you are more than welcome to email me too with any questions that you have. So